We're smooth. We're smooth 98.1 FM. Good morning and welcome to Business Express as we are getting ready to get into this conversation this morning. It's a Wednesday, and the conversation today would be dipping your toes into Bitcoin and the Nigerian stocks. And our guest this morning is ready to go. I'm talking about Kayode Olayemi, founder of what you call a Tree Financial Advisors this morning. Good morning to you.
Hi, Omar. Good morning. Good morning, Lagos.
Okay, so let's pick up. Before we got on this morning, I was looking at an article from Nairametrics, and it speaks of the fact that crypto market starts the year, on a very green note. Bitcoin is at its highest since April 2022 at 45,000 US dollars. So, my question for people like you who are into this industry, just help us understand, are you bullish or bearish when it comes to crypto?
Okay, so first is to understand what's going on here. There are about three factors that are driving this rally that we're seeing in Bitcoin. One is the expectation that the Federal Reserves will start cutting rates going into 2024. And then the expectation of a Bitcoin ETF that the market is expecting that the SEC would register. And then the third one is the Bitcoin halving that's supposed to expected to happen sometimes this year. So this three things have sort of driven that rally that we've seen from the summer of last year. But I mean, if you look at it for the last 1 year, Bitcoin is up about 171%. And typically, when you see Bitcoin the halving happens every 4 years. It usually sort of heralds like a bull run. So on the back of these two things, I mean, I think that there's some leg to this rally that we're seeing, especially if that spot ETF that the market is expecting will be registered. If that goes through, then we could sort of see some that rally that we've seen continue. Yeah.
So let's see, should people with what we see the surge in this direction now, should people dip their toes or just jump into it from what we're seeing now?
Well, so the thing about Bitcoin is I think that it's earned that position in a portfolio today, right? Coming from a few years ago, like today, I think that Bitcoin deserves that position in a portfolio. And now, what size it takes in your portfolio depends on a lot of other factors like your risk appetite and all of those things. But I think yes, looking at this three factors that I mentioned and how that could potentially affect the price of Bitcoin this year and in the next year or so. I think that it deserves that look-in from investors. Now, with the ETF that I mentioned earlier on, there's a potential that you have that a lot of institutional investors start looking at ETF Bitcoin, sort of becoming mainstream with BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world, and they're the ones sort of sponsoring that spot ETF. So I think it deserves that look-in from investors now.
You touched on the prospect of institutions also playing in this direction. So I'd
Yeah.
like you to help us touch base with some countries that were bold enough some time ago to say, you know what, we want to make Bitcoin a means of payment, i.e., we're looking at El Salvador and some countries who dared. How do you see their economies responding to this?
I mean, I think El Salvador has sort of it hasn't really done well for them in terms of using the Bitcoin. I mean, we've seen how the price sort of went down from 60,000 down to about 25 there about last year. So it hasn't really panned out very well for those countries in terms of as a currency in their country. And that's a political issue, you know. So I'm not necessarily I don't necessarily think that we're at that stage yet where um, countries now need to move the transactions into Bitcoin. Fiat still has its place, I think, but as an asset, I think Bitcoin has earned its rights and should sort of be able to feature in certain portfolios now.
One final one, let's bring it back home to Nigeria. The Nigerian Central Bank just recently also lifted its ban on crypto. Is this good news for potential investors in that direction who want to take a portfolio?
Yes, I mean, I think this is good because it sort of brings it to the fore, and it's no longer something that is sort of done under the table now. Everyone can do their crypto transactions through legitimate platforms. You don't have to get your account flagged because you're doing crypto transactions any longer. So I think that this is what the CBN has done is in good stead. Um, and Nigeria is actually a big player in the crypto market, So um, this sort of action by the CBN brings a lot of transparency into the market, and people can sort of go into that space without fear of being getting involved in things that are not approved by the authorities.
Well, if you just joined in, you're listening to Business Express on Smooth 98.1 FM. We'd love to know what you think about the conversation this morning, dipping your toes into the crypto for currency market and for this year as a means of diversifying your means of income or investment. Would you take that step? So you can let us know what you think on 0809 444 0981. Once again, the number to get a response coming will be on 0809 444 0981. Yeah, already I've got a message in from Talkware who's she's well ahead already, and she's dropping some hints relating to crypto, some of the phrases you used a while ago or abbreviation, and she looks up at ETF, exchange traded fund. Would that be right to check back on you on that?
Yeah, that's correct. ETF is an exchange traded fund.
And then she goes and she SEC would be Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC.
Yes,
So
that's the US SEC.
yeah,
That's the market regulator for the US stock market.
so Tokwe, Tokwe gets an A this morning for all of this assignment. First to submit the assignment. Thanks so much for being there. Let's get on to the Nigerian exchange equities market this time around. As we understand, the NGX started the year on a very good note. Just also maybe the crypto is taking the cue from the Nigerian exchange market. But let's see. The Nigerian exchange had a great 2023 closing at about over 40%, but that was in Naira terms. In dollar terms, a different story. Is there a reason to be excited for Nigeria's stock exchange this year?
Um, First is to sort of look at the background. The market got to a high of about 66,000 plus in the last, that was about 2008. That was several years ago. And it was sort of down below water for many, many years. And until last year when the market sort of got back to its previous high and then now we're at 75,000. And I think the market almost actually got to 76,000 yesterday, just about 10 points shy of 76,000. Now, I think that there's a lot to cheer about. Um, when you compare that with the inflation in Nigeria, that's positive real returns. When you compare that with other asset classes, fixed income assets in Nigeria, that's positive real return from the equities market. Yes, when you look at it in dollar terms, it certainly wasn't that good, but I think that there's a lot to cheer, particularly when we look at the fact that the market has been underwater for several years. Going forward, I mean, we saw the market open yesterday very strong. I think that that's expected, typically on years when the market has done very well. By the time we get into January, every stockbroker is getting calls from their clients, their friends to understand what's happening, what drove the market last year, and how they can get in on that action. So I think that that's what we're seeing, and it's pretty much expected.
Now, so many stock sectors of the stock market look at from the banking to oil and gas industry and consumer goods. Which sectors would you like to consider, probably dip your toes into in 2024?
Um, I think that the banking sector is one that deserves a look in. A few of the other sectors, like if you look at the consumers, they struggled last year, and they're likely to struggle again this year just because of that purchasing power that is not very strong at the moment. The banking sector will be interesting. I mean, in terms of earnings last year was quite strong. We probably don't see that same sort of earnings they had last year because one of the major drivers of the earnings last year was the currency, um, the adjustment in the exchange rate last year, and that's probably not going to happen again this year. What I still think that there's still some activity that we could see there, especially the recapitalization that could potentially happen in that space, even though most of the big banks are well above what the market expects that the CBN would announce in terms of the new minimum capital. But I think that there's some activity that we should be looking out for in banking sector this year. Oil and gas is also something to look out for because even though the subsidy is supposed to be gone, it's sort of somewhere in the corner, and that's something that the market will be looking at closely.
Okay, so falling back to an article from Nairametrics once again, we see that the Nigeria's finance minister is stating categorically that the country would rely less on borrowing to finance the 2024 budget. And this leads us to looking at Nigeria's budget deficit. How realistic is this to say the nation would depend more on revenue?
So I think that the Honorable Minister is basically just stating what is in the appropriation bill that was passed by the National Assembly and assented to by the President. Now, the 2024 budget shows about 9.2 trillion deficit compared to about 13.9 trillion last year. Now, that is a reduction, which sort of is what the minister is speaking to. And a lot of that would probably be tied to the adjustment in the currency. So at this time last year, when the 2023 budget, the exchange rate that was used for that was about 460 thereabout. The exchange rate for this year's budget is about 800. And even the market reality is about 900. So you can see that that currency adjustment already brings the government has more naira earnings, right? And definitely that's what we're seeing play out here in terms of the reduced deficit borrowing. However, a budget is an intention backed by legislation. So you might have a situation where, I mean, if it doesn't pan out, that doesn't work out, then you can always go to the National Assembly for a supplementary budget. But overall, I think it's very ambitious of the government to try to drive the budget through revenue, given where we're coming from. It's been deficits for several years, huge deficits. So it's in the right direction to sort of tidy up government finances.
That's still a cause of concern because you may be asking where are the revenue drivers for the country, and some would be suggesting selling stakes in the NNPCL. Is this the direction to go?
It's an option, but that's a political situation there. I think that there are other sources of revenue that the government could look into, for instance, taxes. Yes, taxes might be challenged because we're seeing certain companies also leaving the country. But I think that there's the opportunity to expand the tax net, so get more people within the tax under tax coverage. There are a lot of activities that are going on in the economy that are not taxed. There are a lot of activities going on in the economy that doesn't come under the purview of the taxman. And if we bring those things under the taxman, then we can start to see an increase in government revenue from that point of view before we start to sort of look into selling assets.
So your tray for this morning, Business Express, is almost clear. So we've got just one more issue for you to help us unravel, and you could do that in less than a minute for us. Nigeria is still paying partial subsidy, as you had alluded to, in terms of fuel a while ago, and also for electricity. Now, how can you raise revenues when you still have to do this kind of spending?
The government can raise revenue, but I mean, the expenditure is, on the other hand, is something that is still high. So yes, they're raising revenue, but what you just would see is that it's not sort of resulting in an improvement in the budget situation. The deficit will still be there. So, like I said, it's an ambitious budget, and we'll see how it actually pans out for them. That they're able to balance the books as they wanted without having to go to the market for additional borrowing.
All right, if you just joined in, I'm speaking with Kayode, Olayemi, founder of Tribe Financial Advisor, joins us all the way from Brunswick, Canada. And I understand it's past midnight already if I check out the timing in Montreal, but I wouldn't know what it's like in that region where you are right now. But we've got a message in here for you from Gilbert Musa as we wrap up. He says, on opening the space for crypto trading by CBN, I don't agree with your analyst that it is a good trend. Reasons, as we speak, despite the positive trend of the NGX, Do Nigerians have high trust in the NGX after the market collapse in 2009? I doubt. Let us fix confidence in our local stock market first before considering crypto. Thoughts from Gilbert Musa from Festac.
Well, I mean, there are different asset classes, and generally in financial markets, talk about diversification. So it's still possible for Nigerians to hold the Nigerian Stock Exchange and NGX quoted stocks in their portfolio, and it's also still possible for Nigerians to be able to own Bitcoin in their portfolio. This is the world is a global village. People own Bitcoin across the world, and I don't see there's any reason why Nigerians should be denied the opportunity to also have this asset class in their portfolio.
Thank you very much, Olukayode Olayemi, founder, Tri Financial Advisor, joining us all the way from Brunswick, Canada. We will touch base with you again if we see how crypto is moving once again. But for now, have yourself a great day.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's the side of the show this morning.